So now everything that has been done in, just a simple text. It's not showing anything large, nothing is not showing anything small. And now how do you make things of different sizes, things that are bold, things that are italicized, things that are emphasized? Let's then go to the next point. And once again, I'm putting a paragraph because I want some space between that line and the next line. And so how we're going to work with this is we're going to just call it what's called an H1 line. Okay, oops, H1. And I'm going to say this is my line. And remember, this needs to be closed. Okay, or what happens is if you don't close this particular line, then every line behind it uh, gets stuck with that particular tag. Okay, so always remember, anytime you start something, you put text in between it and you close the tag. Okay, and again, closing is just putting a forward slash in front of the exact same tag as before. So I'm going to save, and I am going to go to my website, to my web page, and I'm going to hit refresh. And now you have a really thick, a really bold line. It's associated with a paragraph, okay, so you don't have to have a paragraph in front of it, or a kind of a P tag in front of it, and this is my line. Now, one of the things that we can do is we can do subsequently smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller line up to a certain point, okay? So let's try that. Let's go to our simple notepad file, and this is my line, and I'm going to create again this same thing, but this time I want something slightly smaller. So I'm going to create H2, and just for fun, just to make life a little easier, I'm just going to cut and paste this line. Oops, I'm just going to cut and paste this line. So Control C or Apple C, and then remember, we are going to change that to H2. Okay, and then let's do something else. Let's try H3, let's try H4, because now we kind of get the point, right? So I'm going to create H3. This is my line, and I didn't think I did that correctly. And then let's do H4. There is no H5 and H6, okay? And you'll notice something, I'm not putting a p-value to actually separate those, because these have in it kind of a built-in paragraph. It'll put in the next line, and it'll give you some separation space. Now we want to make sure that what we see is what we really wanted to see, and clearly. So now remember, as I said, if you're putting these H markations on your line, you do not need to put a paragraph, because that's automatically paragraphed. So H1 is the thickest and the biggest, H2 is smaller, H3 is smaller, and H4 is smaller still, and we don't have H5 and H6. So now let's go back to Notepad. As we go on, we'll put all of the stuff, so everything is going to be on the same web page. Everything is going to be every little thing that we do incrementally is going to be in the same web page. So this way you have everything you ever need in one nice little packet. Okay, so once again, I'm going to put a paragraph. I want to separate these. Okay, now there are some other terms that you need to begin to understand, and that is, let's say, what happens if you want to have underlined text? What happens if you want to have italicized text? What happens if you want to have bold text, right? If you have to have another kind of emphasis, if you want some sort of an emphasis, okay, we can say this is an emphasized line, okay, and that is EM, and you close the tag with EM. This is emphasized line, and you close the tag with EM. What do you think it's going to look like? Okay, we'll see. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go to my web page, and I'm going to hit, and this is an emphasized line. Okay, so let me make this bigger too, so it's a little easier to see. Okay, it's a lot better. So this is an emphasized line. So an emphasized actually puts in almost like an italics kind of a thing. And for bold line, now this time I'm going to have to, because it doesn't have that built-in uh, paragraph, let me use the BR, which is almost like the carriage return, and I'm going to say this is my bold line. And once again, I'm going to close my bold tag, and I know I need to do a carriage return after that, so I'm just going to add my carriage return. I'm going to save my file, and I'm going to refresh, and you'll watch it change. This is my bold line. Now let's go back and add two more, italics and underline. So now you can see how in the middle of your file you can say I can add a word needs to be bold, a word needs to be italicized, a word needs to be emphasized. So we'll look at some of that also. Okay. So let's go to my notepad and then just say now I want an italicized line, and italics is simply I, and you say this is my italicized line, and you close the tag with a forward slash and the same tag, and then I'm going to put BR, and then because we begin to understand this, you can say let's do the underline. An underline is very simple. It's just U, a tag U. That means anything in between that tag U, and we'll type a sentence so we can actually see this in operation. Okay, this is my underlined line. Okay, and I'm going to close the tag. And now I'm done with this, so I'm just going to use a paragraph, so it'll give me a little bit of space between that. Okay, so let's see what that's going to look like, and we'll see that as usual in real time by hitting. And so you'll see this is my italicized. Now notice something, that there is a difference between what the italicized line looks like versus the emphasized line. The italicized line seems to be a little squished. Okay, now let's try and put a sentence together where all of this information is together. Now remember, I already put the paragraph here, so I'll get a little bit of space. So I've given myself a little bit of space. Now, let me just type a sentence. This is a sentence, and excuse the typos, that I am typing. In here, I want to, and I'm just going to put a BR here because I wanted carriage return. I want to show that a word can be emphasized, bolded, italicized, and underlined. Now this is part of a big sentence, right? And I'm just, again, as a default, I'm just going to create a paragraph so that I can get some separation here. Now, what am I going to do? I am going to emphasize, first of all, I'm going to fix the spelling of emphasize here. And what am I going to do? I am going to now use the emphasize. So I'm going to use, and this will tell you that even in the middle of a sentence, you can change things. So I'm going to create the emphasize, but I want the emphasize to end at emphasized. So I am going to close that. Then I'm going to do bold. And then I'm just going to hit a carriage return so it's a little easier to see. And then I'm going to do an italicize, but remember, close the tags once you're done. Again, so I, and underlined, right? So here I'm going to use a U, and I'm going to close it with a U. Okay, and I'm going to create a paragraph this way, and I've saved it now. And then I can go in here to my web page, which is the exact same web page that I've been developing, and I can do this now. So notice what's happening. I emphasized, unfortunately it's misspelled, so I'm going to go and emphasized, okay, and it's not going to show up in the web page, so I've made that change, but you see I've made emphasized, bolded, italicized, and underlined. and I go back to my notepad file, and you'll see that only the parts of the sentence that I wanted this to happen, I can actually change. It's almost like if you were doing this in Word and you just wanted to highlight, you would highlight that word and type in B, click bold, and everything would be bolded, and then you would be able to change the size and things like that. Okay, so it's kind of like that, except now there's a lot more you can do within an HTML file in terms of links and creating a web page and things like that. Okay, so you'll see this is where we are. Okay, let me go down. This is where we began, and this is where we are right now. And again, if you look at your web page, this is where we started right from the very beginning, right? It's web.html. That's the same file that we're developing, and we're just doing different things to it, so different things, okay? And I'm going to move this stuff a little higher. Same here, I'm going to move this stuff a little higher. Now, let's see how we can create a list. Now, if you want to create a list, there are two ways in which you can do it. One is if you wanted to use bullet points, and one is if you want to use numbers. Now, if you wanted to use numbers, this is what you would do. You would start with a tag and you would call it OL. Okay? And then always keep it clean, close the tag. That means anything that you type in between here is going to be part of the list. What you can do is, you can, for example, just to make life easy for you, you can say, this is my list. This is my numbered list. Okay, and I'm just going to create a paragraph here, and then within that list, if you want to use elements, and let's just call it element 1, element 2, element 3. Okay, that would be li. Okay, and I'm going to call it element 1, and then remember, close that, and then we'll see what this looks like. Okay, and now remember, we started OL, right? Li, element 1, element 2, element 3, and then we closed it with the OL, which kind of matches this OL, right? But forward slash. Now, what does that look like? Let's save our file, go to the web page, and remember, I've kind of moved the web page up so we can see new things as they are being added. And I see this is my numbered list, and element 2 is kind of messed up, so I'm trying to see what I didn't do correctly there. So let's go back, and again, this is a nice way, when you write computer programs, we always do what is called debugging. Now clearly we wanted element 1, 2, element 2, and 3, element 3, but that's not work. So what did I do wrong? Let's go take a look. Turns out that instead of li here, I put L1. Okay, so it didn't recognize that, and I have to change that. Okay, that's kind of one way of debugging. I'm going to save. I'm going to go back to my internet site, to my website, and now I have element 1, element 2, element. Okay, so here's how you create a numbered list. And then later I'm going to show you how you can create a numbered list within a numbered list. And now let's go to my simple notepad file. Now, I'm going to put a paragraph here, okay, just so I can separate it. And now I'm going to create a bulleted list, a list of bullet points. Okay, so here, if you want a numbered list, you create OL. If you wanted a bullet point, that is a non-numbered list, but still the creation of a list, you create what is called UL. And then I'm going to create, this is my bulleted list. And again, this time I'm just going to put a BR. I don't want a paragraph here, okay, because it looks like it's creating too much of a space. And it's perfectly fine to, to say, oh, doesn't look quite nice, so I'm going to change it. Remember, the nicest part about creating a web page is it looks kind of boring and vanilla here, but once you move it into your web page, it actually begins to look nice. Now this is my bulleted list, and that's what I'm going to look at, and I'm kind of moving this up a little bit. So once again, I'm going to close the UL, And then in between that I'm going to put, and once again for OL you have LI, that kind of identifies the elements of your list. But even in this case it's still LI. But what determines that it is a non-numbered list versus a numbered list is the OL and the UL. Okay, so I'm going to type in LI element 1, and I'm going to close my LI, and then another LI. This time I'm going to remember not to put not to put an A1 instead of an I. Okay, and my UL is closed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my file. I'm going to go to my website, and I am going to highlight this information. This is where we are. Okay, now that is bulleted. Now what happens if I wanted to create bullets and then a sub bullet between a bullet? Okay, so let's see what that file is going to look like. So if I wanted to create a nested list, so let's say for example I have my OL file, okay, and I'm going to move this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, okay, again here, and I'm going to put a paragraph here, and I'm going to create another list here, okay, and I'm going to use the first list so I don't have to kind of type the things I've already typed. So this is my numbered list. Now within this element 1, I want to create element A, B, and C, and if I want it numbered, I'm going to call it, this is my sublist. Okay, this is my sublist, and then here I have my Li, okay, element A, and it's not necessarily going to be in terms of A, B, C, Li, and then I'm just going to create 2. Okay, so now within a numbered element, I'm going to create, and I'm just going to make this a little clear, I'm going to create a numbered sublist. Okay, but remember, so this is my first OL, and that is covered by that OL. Now I've got another list within the elements of the first list, so I have to remember to close this OL. Okay, now what I want to do is, so we know how we created a sub list within the list, but that OL tells us that we want it numbered. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go to my web page, and I'm going to see what it looks like. And you see, for example, I have an element numbered list, element 1, and within the element 1 I've got a sub list, and I've called that element A and element B. Now even within my sublist, I can have a bulleted list. And in order to create the bulleted list, all I'm doing is UL. And the separation, the little space that I'm adding doesn't matter too much because it's just for me to make it look easy. So this is my bulleted sublist. Okay, and I'm going to put a carriage return there. And then I element A, and I'm going to close it. Okay, now remember there is a UL here, so I've got to close that UL, and I'm going to save it. And you'll see when we go to our web page, you can see that it created a bulleted sublist. What I can do is, and we can just do this as a quick exercise, is I can go and take my UL. So within my list of my original bulleted list, that is here, okay, that is here, I can go and create a numbered list and a non-numbered list. Okay, so let me do that. So let me copy the whole UL again so that I don't have to waste my time typing. And I'm going to copy the paragraph part also. And I'm going to copy it here. Okay, so I've recopied my entire UL. Now in here what I want to do is, just like in the previous case, I want to take my, and I can go back here, and I can, you see this thing, this particular list, this OL list. I'm just going to cut and paste it just so I can create a numbered list within, and I can create a numbered list inside of my bulleted list, right? So I'm just going to put that here. I'm just going to cut and paste the whole thing here. And you'll see that under that, I've got a bulleted list, right? And then I can go back up here and go to my unbulleted list and add that to my element 2. So you can see you can create a list, and then you can create a list within a list within a list within a list within a list, right? And you can do that. And all you can do is just have to be careful about how you place your tags. Okay, so once again, this information as it is presented to you is will be available to you, so you can go and you can make modifications and changes and things like that. Okay, so now let's look at what that looks like. Oops. So we go to our internet web page and I hit, and you'll see that even in the bulleted list, right, in the bulleted list here, you have a sublist which is a numbered sublist, and then you have a bulleted sublist within that sublist. And many of these can then be created. Now there are some other markup elements that you can use. So for example, we had bold, emphasize, italics, and underline. There are some other ones that we can try, and so let's take a look at them. So we go back to our notepad where we want to go back to our notepad where we want to type stuff. Here's where we are. Let me move this up a little bit, and this is where we are, right? Where you can see the cursor. And so, for example, we're going to try something different. We're going to call it uh, three more things: strong, mark, and small. Okay, so here I'm going to say strong, and once again, anytime you open a markup tag, you have to close it. This is strong text, okay, and I'm going to close the strong, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, I've saved my file, and I am going to, this is strong text, kind of looks like bold, right? And again, there are different ways of looking at it. Now let's try something called as mark, see what that does. So let's go back to our notepad file, and under the strong text, and let me move this up a little bit. I'm going to put in mark. This is marked text, and I'm going to close the tag, and let's see what mark looks like. Ah, mark text. Now, this is nice. It puts a little, think about it as a highlighter. Okay. So now, what's the problem here that we need to fix? Well, we would need to put it on the next line, right? So let's go back to our file. Let's go back to our notepad file and see if we can debug this, fix it. Now, strong. Now, clearly, strong and mark do not have the built-in carriage return or the built-in paragraph feature in it. And let's try something else. So we'll fix this, and then we do something called as small, where this is where the text is small. Now these are, you can try different variations of these. For example, if you made something bold, if you made something emphasized, it might look kind of the same. If you make something H4, it might be bold, but you're not necessarily able to tell the difference. Okay, so this is small text. And I'm going to close the markup, and I'm going to save it and see what our web page looks like. Okay, and now remember what I did was I cleaned out the BR because this mark text was showing up on the same line, so I added a BR, so in the carriage return it would go on the next line. And so this is like using a nice little highlighter, right? And I'm going to, and then the small text really becomes small. Okay, and again, if you feel the need to use small text, you can also then, when we come to fonts, we'll basically be able to learn how to use fonts. Okay, what else can we learn from here? Now, you have this idea of subscript. Okay, subscript. So a subscript is where it kind of becomes smaller and it's lower down. The alternate to a subscript is a superscript. How do you write a subscript and a superscript within a web page? So let's go there to our notepad file, and so let's say I'm going to create a sentence, and I'm going to put a paragraph to achieve a little bit of a separation here, and I'm going to type in this is, and subscript I use sub, and then I'm going to close the subscript, or else everything is going to show up in subscript text. Type correctly, and I'm going to put a paragraph or a carriage return here. And then, while we're doing subscript, let me try superscript in the same thing so we don't have to keep doing this over. This is superscripted. Now for superscripted, you use SUP. You notice how simple it is when you try some of these things, and it looks so much nicer. I mean, you can actually create a web page. So right now what we're playing around is with mostly text. Okay, so, and I'm going to close that because anything that's enclosed within those marked up tags is going to change. Everything else is going to look the same, and I'm going to separate that with a, okay, and I've saved that, and I'm going to go to my web page, and I'm going to hit refresh, and let's move this up a little bit. Okay, so notice the subscripted text. The subscripted text shows up as a subscript, and the superscripted, let me see if I can make this bigger, and the subscripted text and the superscripted text. Now I made a mistake, right? Looks like even the text part has become superscripted, and that means I didn't close the tags correctly. So let me go and close it correctly. And guess what I did? I used superscripted text here, and I closed the markup with a subscript markup, so it didn't recognize it. So everything from now on is superscripted, right? So that's a change that I need to make. Okay, so I'm going to save it. We're going to go back to our web page, and and now it's exactly what we want, is subscripted and superscripted. So continuing then, um, let's look at a few more things, and so we already saw what a paragraph does. So let's look at a couple more things. Uh, the first thing, of course, is, let's say you wanted to make a quote for yourself. Okay, you wanted to make a quote for yourself. So, for example, you wanted to say, this is where I begin a new thing. Okay, but the question is, if I saved it, for example, it's going to show up. So this is where we are, right? And if I refresh the page, I haven't saved the file, of course. So for example, if I put this information, this is where I begin a new thing, and I save it, and I go to the web page, and I go to the web page, and I hit, if I refresh the page, you'll see that it typed in. But I don't want it typed that way. I wanted to make a comment for myself. Okay, I want to make a comment for myself, so I don't have to worry about. I want to make this as a comment for myself, so I don't have to uh, make so I know what it is for me in this file. Okay, but I don't want it to show up on the web page. So in order to do that, what you would do is you would do this. You would put it open caret, and you'd put an exclamation mark, and then you'd put the two dashes, and then you would end it with. So this is almost like saying that new thing, but this is a comment just for myself. Okay, so you'll see, for example, I'll just move this. You see, you can make this comment like this, and now let me save it, and you'll find that it goes away. Okay, it goes away because now it's a comment. So if you ever wanted to make a comment for yourself, include it in this format. So you open the caret, you put an exclamation mark, you put two dashes, and then you close it by putting a dash dash, and then you close then you close that caret. Okay, and that's the way you put a comment for yourself. Now, what else can we learn from this? um, let's say, for example, you were typing a large quote. Okay, a large quote, and you wanted to actually create a block quote for it. So if you wanted to create a block quote for it, you can take that information. So for example, I have taken the information which I used for I've taken the information which I had used to demonstrate within a sentence, emphasize, italics, bold, underline, etc. And let me introduce that sentence in here. Okay, so I'm going to put a parentheses here. Now, if I wanted to create a block quote out of it, I would just say, I would type in here, quote, and then at the end here, I would say, I would close that tag. And you know how we close tags, right? We've said this many times before. We can actually put a forward slash, right? And I'm going to save it, and then we'll go to the web page and see what it looks like. So you see here, it is automatically put into this kind of block format, right? And so if you wanted to, for example, you were writing some sort of a document and you made an HTML file out of it, what you would do is put a block quote, and then that would, that would kind of separate that and provide also like a paragraph thing there. Now, on the other hand, if you wanted to create a small quote, okay, you want to create a small quote, let's go back to our editor. And for a small quote, what you would do is you just put Q, and we'll say this, oops, this is a small quote, and I'm going to close that tag correctly, and I'm just going to put a parenthesis, and I'm just going to put a paragraph there. And what the paragraph helps me to do is just make sure that the next time something is not just going to be attached and there's some separation between the things that I'm typing. Because as you can see now, we have typed a whole bunch of things, from the beginning of the file, and it's been a great learning experience, right? So, but I wanted to keep everything within the same. I wanted to keep everything within the same file. So this way you can get, all the elements that you need to create your own web page in the same file. Okay, so this is a small quote. Now let's see what that small quote looks like on our web page. And did I save it? Not yet. So I'll go back here and I'll hit that. And you'll say this is a small quote. So though you didn't really put quotations, you'll realize that it actually puts quotes for you. So that's the difference between a block quote and a small quote. So a lot of very interesting markup. You've learned how to create bullet points. You have learned how to create lists. Every computer now has a browser. And for example, if you were creating some sort of a document and you didn't have access to Microsoft Word or something like that, you could actually create something like this. And if you had a server, you could store your web page in a server, include some sort of a link, and then other people would be able to see what you're trying to do. Okay. Let's go take a look at some other things that we can do. If, for example, you have an abbreviation, okay, and so let's see how these abbreviations work. So I'm going to go back to my editor, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to make some space for myself. I already have a paragraph, and then I'm going to say the abbreviation is ABBR. Okay, and then I'm going to put the title, World Health Organization, and I'm going to close these quotes, and I'm going to close that. Okay, the abbreviation title. Okay, so that's like my tag, and I'm going to do WHO, and then I'm going to close the abbreviation tag. Okay, and I'm going to then put a paragraph thing in here. All right, let's see what this looks like now. So the question is, there's a tag which is called abbreviation. It's going to take the abbreviation and it's going to create a quote. So let's go to the web page. Let me save it first. And let's go to our web page. And if I hit, I see the who. And now you might say, well, what does that mean? How does it tell? Well, we know that it's put a little dotted line underneath it without any prompting. We didn't ask it to do it. And what you'll see here is, what's a really cool part is, if you mouse over, if you mouse over, this is something you can't see here, but if you mouse over, that you can't see in the in what's being typed, but when you create your own web page, and I'll basically the final web page, I will upload this so you can play around with it, and so you'll see what you're really looking at is it opens a little like a little text box which says World Health Organization. So you can create an abbreviation, you can call it an abbreviation, and then it types the abbreviation, and then it actually adds the when you mouse over it, it'll actually tell you what that is. Okay, let me see if I can do a desktop and show you. So for example, here you can see as I'm mousing over, and I'll show you what that is in a second. I'll expand this significantly so you see what I'm talking about here, and you see here, okay, that's my website. If I mouse over, you'll see there's a World Health Organization. Let me make it even bigger yet. Okay, so you see WHO. I'm going to make it really big, and you can see the WHO, and if I mouse over it, let me move this slightly higher, and if I mouse over it, you'll see it creates this thing called as World Health Organization. Okay, so that's another very useful thing that we can do out here. So a lot of very cool, very interesting things in here. Now, you can color your text. We talked about the background color, which allows us to make this into a makes this into sky blue. Let me just. So you'll see, we'll get out of that, and you'll see, for example, let's say you wanted to type a sentence and you want to color it and change the size, and you just wanted to do it off the top of without any additional knowledge. Okay, so now we know fonts. For example, in Microsoft Word, you font, you'll say the type is Arial or Calibri or Times New Roman. There is, of course, the font size will tell you the text size, and you can also go and change the color. Here's one way to do it. And so let's go back to our notepad, and here, for example, I say, and I've got a paragraph anyway, so I'm not worried too much about it. I'll put another paragraph. Actually, it's not necessary. And if I say font, okay, and the font will be, and we'll make different modifications to this. This is an example of font, okay, and then I'm going to have to close my tag, and that's how I close it. Okay, so I'm going to save my file, and I'm going to go to the web page and refresh, and you say this is an example of font. Well, that doesn't really help us, because that's just regular type, right? So what else can we do with the font? We can, for example, within the font, just like within abbreviation, you had something called as a title. I can put color equals dark blue. Okay, and whatever I include in the font here, the the end the end of the font is still the tag that just closes the font tag. Okay, so I'm going to see what happens here, and we'll go to our web page. And you can see it immediately turned a darker blue, which is not immediately very obvious. So I'm going to keep it there, and in my file, I'm going to change the color to red. Okay, so you'll see I've changed the color to red now, and the color is red. Now the red I use because it's a nice little contrast over the blue, and it'll be a lot easy to see. Okay, and so I'll save it. Let's go to the web page, and now you see that this is an example of a font that's red. Now, alternatively, you can also take what you have here and say, well, I'm going to make it bold, so I can put the bold here. And of course, anything I open, close. Remember, font is on the outside. This tag is on the outside. The font tag is on the outside. So the closing of the font tag also should be on the outside. Bold is on the inside. So the closing of the bold tag also should be on the inside. Okay, and I am going to go in there and change it. And now you notice that it's bold. Something else that we can do is, what about the font size? Now for font size, we can do exactly the same thing that we do, for example, in Word document, and it's within the font uh, tag, so it's just a variation on the font, and I'm just going to call size, and in bold, I'm going to put 5. Okay, and again, you don't need to do anything else because this all comes within font. It all comes within font, so I just have to close the font. And again, for example, just to make things a little different, I'm just going to put emphasize. There's different things we can do, and we're also going to close emphasize, and I'm going to save it, and let's run it. And so you can see this is an example of font, but because I put a size of 5, so let's say, for example, if we really exaggerate it and go and say, let's put a size of 20. Okay, let's put a size of 20. If we put a size of 20, oops, not 205, because that would eat up the whole page. And I'm going to save it. And let's try it. So now we have a large example of a font. Alternatively, if we say I want to emphasize it and underline it, I'll say U. And then remember, it's all the tags are all nested, and because the U is the innermost, I'm going to close that tag using an innermost U. And now you're going to get something that's emphasized as well as underlined. Okay, and I'm seeing where that period came from, so I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clean up that period of font. Uh, okay, so this is what one way in which you can kind of create a colored text in the middle of a lot of small text. You can change it. Now let's say, what else do we need? Now, the most important thing about the most important aspect of web pages is links. Okay, the important part of web pages is links. So let's just go and include a link. Now, let's say we want to go to a link. Let's go to the TTU website, right? Now, the way you do this is a a href. So this is right, and then in parentheses you can use single quotes. Okay, so let's look. What is the what is the TTU website? Texas Tech University. Okay, it's ttu.edu, www.ttu.edu. So I'm just going to cut and paste this site, and we can go to our notepad, and I'm going to say href ttu.edu. I'm going to close the quotes, and I'm going to close that because that is part of the A tag, and I'm going to put page of the Texas University. Now, what is the only thing that I need to close? Just the A tag. Okay, and then that should be it. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go and test it out. Okay. And web page of the Texas Tech University. Now, what happened here is I forgot to put the paragraph. So now it's gone to the next one. And notice something, it automatically created a link. So if I click on this link, it went to the TTU website. Okay, goes to the TTU website, and then there's a whole bunch of additional information that you can get from this TTU website. If I made this smaller and I scrolled up, and again I'm just using this for illustrative purposes, that's the Texas Tech University web page. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of other things like visit, apply, give, and all the internal choices. Okay, so similarly I can now come back to it. Now, what happened with our okay, now I can change the website to just say to reflect just, this is the web page. I don't have to say that. I just say Texas Tech University. So remember, anytime you want to create a link, you can do that. Okay, ttu.edu, and you can create a link. Now, notice something. The ttu.edu, the link is the most important. I haven't changed that. I just called it Texas Tech University, and I am going to save it. And you see the new web page that's created. See, Texas Tech University. Now, the name you give that is outside of that tag doesn't really matter. It's the link that matters, and that is going to be the same. Okay, and so Texas Tech University. Alternatively, you can just say just to kind of show you, you don't have to say Texas Tech University. You would say my college's first page. Okay, and it's going to take you to the exact same. It's going to take you to the exact. It just says my college's first page is going to take you to the Texas Tech University webpage, which is pretty cool, pretty dynamic in my opinion. All right, so if I go back, that is how you create a web page. But here's what's going on right now. You'll realize that it opens in the same page in which we have created our internet site. Okay, and so that's not very good because you'd rather have it. You don't want to go back and forth on your main internet page. So we'll keep this link, we won't change it, and we'll just go back and say, well, how do you create a web page which allows you to when you click on the link, it opens into a new page. Okay, and so let's try that. Again, always a good idea to put a paragraph thing here. And so for example, I am going to create. Now, while we are doing this, remember something. I had created the HTML at the very beginning, and everything is being typed inside it, right? I had created the body. Everything is being created inside the body. So again, it's always a good habit if you're going to start a tag, end a tag, and then anything that's associated with the tag will go in the middle. Now, if I wanted to create the same website, but I wanted to open in a right? Now, if I want to make sure that it opens in another window or another tab, another window or another tab, you can do something like this, call it target, and this is something just underscore blank. Okay, and again, you can use single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't really matter that much. Target equal to blank, and now that'll tell you something more, and you can say TTU, and I'm going to close the A just to separate this, and then I'm going to create a paragraph just so we get ready for the next file. Okay, so that is now saved, and we'll go to our web page, and we click on this, And now we have a new link. Now what happens, for example, when I click on this link is this is still my old page. Okay, this is the page that I'm working on. This is like my working web page. You'll see, and I'll go to desktop, you'll see that it went to, and I'm going to scroll this down, see, and this is the web.html file that we're working with, right? That's our live website. It went to another tab. Okay, and so you'll see if I click on that tab, as you can watch it happen, it goes to the next tab. So here's one way in which you can work the link such that it allows you to it allows you to put stuff into a new page or a new tab or a completely new page. So that's something that's important to learn. And the last thing that we're going to learn, uh, well, there's a couple more things that we're going to learn, but one more thing that we're going to learn now is images. Remember, you use images quite a lot, and then you can create links out of images, and so we'll see how to do that. So let's say the the what is the command for images. And so the command for images is, so first of all, one of the best easiest things you can do, and let me show you what the folder is, right? So that you'll see in this folder that I've got these pages that I have downloaded from our TTU website, the administration tower, the masked raider, the sub, don't worry about that one. And the Will Rogers, the statue gets wrapped in red before any home game. Okay, and this is our web.html. This is our web page. So one of the best things you can do if you're creating a web page, just to make life a little easier for yourself, is make sure that the same folder that has uh, your web your web page, that HTML file, which we are actually editing using Notepad, so there's nothing fancy there. All the pictures should be in the same place. Okay, so you actually have to um, specify an address. So on the other hand, if you became a famous web developer, you can always say, well, I'm keeping my video files there, and I'm keeping my photograph files there, my picture files there, and then you've got to include in your web page. You have to include your entire the address. Now, even in this case, you're going to have to put the entire address, and I'll show you what happens if you don't. Okay, so let me just for the sake of this, let's take this thing, just so I know the full name of this, and I can just add it. Okay, and so the command for this is so let's say if I begin to type in my notepad file, and so I've got a paragraph here. So if I say image, and that's my code, my for the image, source is src, and then I'm just going to put my, okay, and I'm going to close it, and I'm going to say picture of, it's just like a link, except it's an image source, and I'm just going to put picture of let's type it correctly, TTU's administration tower. Okay, and you close by using the image. Remember, anything you open, you also have to close it similarly. What happens? What do you think is going to happen? So let's go to the thing and see if the picture opens, and you'll see that it actually has. Okay, it actually has opened. and that would help. It helps, for example, if you keep your page, your pictures in the same folder as you would in the you would keep your pictures in the same place as you would your HTML file. Now this seems kind of small, so one of the things that we can do is we can play around with the size. Um, there's another command that you can use. So for example, let's go back to our file, and you've not really seen the picture, have you? Okay, so this is the picture of the TTU's administration, the administration building tower. So let's say we put image source administration tower, picture of TTU's administration building tower, doesn't matter, and then I hit enter, I save it, and I go to our website, and I see that the picture of the tower the picture of the tower is there. Okay, now that's the picture that I had. Now again, as I said before, it's a very good idea to make sure that your pictures are in the same folder as your web page. Okay, now what else can we do? Now one of the things that we can do is, this might be small. You can play around with the size of this, and so and that is determined by doing what is called width and height. And everything is, because we're dealing with the image, right? The image tag. We can say, let's say width. I'm just going to call it 200, 200, and height equals 200. So this is like pixels. That's basically the way you look at it. You can also specify inches, etc., but you can certainly play with those numbers if you want. So I am now highlighting it, and it just showed up a little bigger. Right now, if I put width and height equals 500, it's going to be a lot bigger. But that just tells you the width and the height are the two other parameters that you can use. Another one that you can use is alt. Okay, alt, and that is, let's say this is picture of admin tower, and I'm just going to make a short form of it. And that's another feature within the image tag. And I'm going to save it, and we go to the internet, and I highlight it. Now what happens here? You don't really see much, do you? No. Okay, so alt is supposed to actually give you a kind of a little window opens up on, and which tells you a little bit more about that. So let's not worry about that for the time being. So those are the pictures, and for example, I can then take the other pictures. I can then take the other pictures and add them one after the other. Okay, so let's do that. And so I have that, and I'm just going to cut and paste, and all I'm going to do is put different pictures here. One, two. I've got three other pictures, and I just want to make sure that I go to my folder. Uh, I go to my folder, and I'm going to get, first of all, the masked rider. Okay, and I'm going to save that here in the source. So I'm going to get the administration building, and all of them is the same. Then I'm going to go back in here and going to get the Will Rogers picture, all of it, the whole thing, because you got to specify the whole thing. And then you'll see, for example, I'm going to create that. I'm not going to worry about anything else. I'm not going to worry about the alt. I'm going to take those out. So the width is the same. Okay, all the widths are the same. And so one is picture of administration tower. The other is masked rider. And then the next one is, let's call it Will Rogers. Will Rogers. And I'm going to save these files, and let's see all three pictures show up, and I've made all of them the same width and the same height. So all the pictures are going to be showing up. Now if I put, paragraphs in between them, they will all go one below the other. Okay? Now, you notice something. You notice something that you might potentially not like, and that is you see these. It shows up right in front, right in front of it, and again, that's not even correct because I didn't close something, and you'll see now I fixed it, and you'll see that the Will Rogers just shows up as itself. Wouldn't it be nice to have a figure caption be below the picture, and then because they're all showing up in the same size, let's put them one below the other, so I can put a paragraph which separates the two, and let's do that just to make it a little cleaner. And so I'm going to put a paragraph here. I'm going to put a paragraph here. So this way I separate the pictures. I can kind of list them one below the other. Okay, and then there's a paragraph there. And that'll fix things a little bit, but I think the other issue that we were talking about will still be there. Okay. And so now that's one below the other. But for some reason the figure is the caption is right beside the figure, and wouldn't it be nice to have it below? All right. So if that's the case, we will we will try something a little different, and that is identify something called as a figure caption. Okay, so let's go back to our editing file. And so here, for the picture, I'm going to put something called as fig, oops, and this is the tag, caption, and then you'll see I'm going to close it with a figure caption. And we close it with that forward slash, which marks the which marks the end of the. And I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of them. I just cut and paste to make life a little easier. So I'm going to put it there. I'm going to put it there. And then I'm also going to take the fig caption thing and, for example, and cut and paste it here and here. I'm going to save it, see what happens, and now you'll see it's a lot nicer because it comes actually like a proper caption. Okay, and I think that's a lot better. Now, what happens if, for example, you want to take a picture, and we'll take the masked rider for example, and rather than create a link to the masked to the picture of the masked rider, we use the picture of the masked rider, but then when you click on it, it will actually take you to the TTU website. Okay, so let's try that. So let's try that. Okay, so let's try that. And so for example, I'm going to create a href, and I'm going to open it in the same file so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And this is https://www.ttu.edu, and I'm going to close the quote, and we don't have to do the target blank, but now what I'll do is I will take the masked rider, just the image source, so no need for caption. Image source equals masked rider put that in there. So the link is the picture itself. Okay, I don't need a caption, and that's it. Okay, and then I'm going to close this because that's the A tag for the link tag, and I'm just going to put another paragraph just to make things a little cleaner and separated. So we go to our web page, and so here's where we are, and you have a picture now, but notice something, that it's now a link. If I click on the link, it goes to the web page, right? And so now you'll see that the picture itself can be made into a link, okay? And that's something that that would be, in my opinion, very useful. Where you can create a bunch of pictures, you can put them in a frame, and we'll see what that frame is next time. Uh, we'll see what that frame is in as we go along. And there's one more topic that needs to be dealt with, and that is how to create tables in HTML, and that'll be the last. But I think at this point you're capable of, with a little creativity, a little ingenuity, building your own websites, creating links, creating tables, playing around with the fonts, playing around with the sizes. And like I said, this is not the end of uh, HTML. This is kind of the beginning. But once you've kind of gotten over that hump and you say, oh, wait a minute, this is not that bad. I can build a website. I can build a website. Then you begin to say that, wouldn't it be nice that to do something different, something that has not been taught in this particular set of lectures, and then you can just go and look it up, and you can go from there. Okay, so the two things that we want to explore are colors next time and tables. Okay. So, continuing our discussion now. So, continuing our discussion now, let's look at two more topics that I'd like to cover. And once again, we'll give you the basics, which should be enough for you to do most of what you want to do. But then also, I'll include some links that if you want to try something a little more fancy, once again, it's not much. You create the notepad file, you cut and paste, the HTML code for the table, for the color, etc., in the body of the text, and you just save the file, and then you go and refresh your web page, and that should work just as well. So one of the things that we have to consider is what is called color. Okay, now typically what we have said is, when we were playing around with colors, we said, oh, red or light red or pink or light pink. And certainly when we were working on, for example, the background for our file, we began looking at blue, light blue, sky blue, right? That's what we were looking for. So now we are looking for example, colors. And now again, this is where we were as of as of the last class, where we had, we said that using a figure caption allows you the caption to be, to be below as opposed to besides. And here's what we had. And remember, the last thing we did was we saw how we can actually use the how we can use, and we saw how we can use a picture as a link. And let's just look at that for a second, so we know exactly what we're talking about here. So what I did was I used the ahref and created the link. And then instead of putting text in here like I did before, like for example, my college's first web page, etc., my college's first web page, or for example TTU, which is what I want the text to show up, which when you click you get the link. We actually put the image resource, right? We put the image file as a link, and the end result is you actually see that it shows up as a link. Okay, and again, it's a pretty good website, and that's what that's what uh, this allows us. Now, wanted to highlight one more thing. If we go and I just say, let's say, type. Okay, I'm going to type once again the colors. But now, rather than say red, light red, what if we wanted to see a whole shade of colors so we can generally pick and choose these colors? So I'm going to just call it font like I did before. And I'm going to say we're testing out colors, right? And I'm going to close the font. Now I'm going to use a size that's large so we can see it. I'm just going to call it 10, right? That's what we did. And we're going to deal with colors, but right now let's not deal with colors. Let's just look at the file as it appears, okay? And so here's where we are. And let me adjust this a little bit. This is where we were, okay? And I'm going to refresh. I'm going to hit refresh, and we're going to say we're going to test out colors. Now, what we did, and again, the size of the font, which was 10, decided how big something is, right? Now, remember how I also said uh, how I also oops, and remember how I also said let's just do colors. So I said color equals red, okay? And when we have colors equals red, we'll see I save that file, and let's go to our internet file, and let me refresh that, and we got testing out colors. Now the question is, what happens if we really need a range of colors? And for that, I will add a link here, and I'm going to type that in my notepad. But what we're going to do is, rather than it show up, I'm actually going to create a link in there. Okay, so let's go to our notepad file and say uh, link, okay, equals, and I know the website here, so I'm going to just cut and paste it. Okay, I'm going to paste it, so this way you're going to get a whole bunch of ranges of colors to play around with. Almost essentially any color that you can imagine, you should be able to get here. And I've got that link, so I'm going to go back to my notepad, and I'm going to say that is going to be my link. And I'm going to call, and I'm going to say the link to all, let me move this a little bit aside. I'm trying to make this big, to all HTML colors, and I'm going to close that down. And again, just like for usual, we're going to add a paragraph just to make sure that things are nicely separated. Okay. And so we're going to test out colors. I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to hit refresh, and I see the link to all HTML colors. So for example, if I click on this, you're going to see something really interesting. Okay, let me move this up a little bit, and I'm going to click on that link. See, so you can see what that web page is just when I highlight it, and I'm going to hit the link, and you'll see now a whole bunch of of things to do with colors. Really interesting things. And again, this is a very good website, the W3 Schools. So you'll have the names of colors, and then let me scroll down. So these are your typical colors. If you type, for example, red, yellow, cyan, blue, magenta, those are the colors you can do. You can also, for example, try it yourself, and it'll tell you different ways. And I'm not, in this particular case, you'll see here there's something called style. I'm not going to worry too much about style for the purposes of this discussion, but hopefully I've given you enough that you can just, if you want to do something novel, you can just cut and paste it, and it will work, right? So for example, if you want to do something like these where you have these kind of banners, you can actually use those. And so it tells you, the background color is red and the color is white, For example, I could edit this by just calling the color pink, okay, and I'm going to run it. See, you can click on the run here and notice how it turned pink. Now I'm not going to mess around with it because that's the best real contrast that you get, okay? And I'm going to run it, and now it's going to turn white. So a lot of really interesting things can be learned through this. Okay, so but what I wanted to tell you, in case you really wanted a choice of colors, you can get color names, for example. Okay, all these color names. But see, notice something that under all these color names is you have something very interesting here, and that is what is called a hexadecimal color code. Now there is an RGB color code too, but the hexadecimal color code is actually very interesting. And notice the pound sign or the hashtag that you see here. Let me go back one. And so, for example, this is very important to understand that you have to have the hashtag. So if you want, like, for example, you could type in aquamarine and you would get the color you want. And let's test it. So we go back to Notepad and I'm going to test in, color red. I'm going to put color equals aquamarine. Okay, I'm going to save it. And I'm going to go to my web page, my original web page, and I'm going to go here, and you see that it's already kind of refreshed and and you can see here that it's already turned aquamarine. Now, there's something else to consider with aquamarine, and so when we look at color names, for example, this 7FFFD4, so the first two letters literally are the red value. The second two letters are the green value. So you can have letters or numbers, so it's a hexadecimal code. So let's not worry about the hexadecimal code, but just recognize you get all kinds of choices. So now, if I say I want to really modify the color very slightly, let's try, for example, the hexadecimal code. And how would we create a font out of that? And that means that anytime you use a color, even if you want to create the background color or a banner color, it doesn't really matter. For a color equals to that hexadecimal code should get you that color. Okay, so remember 7FFFD4. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my notepad and I'm going to create in the place of aquamarine, but remember the hashtag, okay? The pound sign, you young people like to call it a hashtag. So 7FFF, it doesn't matter whether it's uppercase or lowercase, D4, okay? And I'm going to save it, and you'll see what happens. You'll see what happens, and you'll realize that when I go here and I refresh it, nothing changes. Okay, which means now that rather than put the value aquamarine, I'm going to put in the code for it, right? And that code is the 7FFFD4, which is the code for aquamarine. So now here's what happens is we can see these subtle changes. So for example, if we add FFFFD7 and save it, okay, and we go to our internet site, and now you'll see that the color has changed, but very, very slightly, not much of a change, right? Now, again, so that's the really crucial part about about colors. Okay, now the question is, we can of course go to our color website and you'll see all these really interesting things. So for example, if you want to see the color values, if you want any particular color, so for example, you could type in medium blue, but you'd also get, but you would have to kind of remember this hexadecimal code. So once again, the link is included. So if you want to play around with colors, for example, here you have all the shades of pink, and the hexadecimal codes are here, right? Now, you're going to remember light salmon versus salmon, but you're not really sure whether salmon is even a color that HTML accepts. So we can just use the hexadecimal codes. Okay, what else can we look at? Let me go up a little bit and go back up here. Okay, so for example, you can look at color shades. So all the shades going from black to white are now available to you. You can pick colors. So for example, you want the shades, right? You want the shades associated with red. If I move to this color, I'm going to get all the shades of pink. So you see, you can, in terms of picking and choosing, you have so much that is available for you. So once again, now you don't almost don't have to worry about colors. What you would do is you would just go directly to that link of the HTML colors that I provided, and then you can look at any of these choices, things that are involving a mixture of colors, for example, that and that, and it'll give you that range. For example, color converter, you know, and I'm not going to worry about the RGB. For example, if you put in a color here, it'll tell you what those other colors are and the other choices that can also use. But again, either you'll put the color in there, and if that color is not available, you go to the color picker on this website, and you will see all the choices that are available. So this is the red, green, and blue, and you can kind of change the numbers here, and you can see how those colors also change, and it'll tell you compared to that. So you can actually say, I want to really, mix and match my colors here. So I go here, here, and here, and now it'll tell you what the hexadecimal code is, and you can then include it. So you can essentially, any color that you can imagine, the hexadecimal code will cover it. Okay, so there's the color hexadecimal colors. You can also try that, and it'll give you the corresponding RGB, though you don't really need it. And again, this is a nice little discussion on colors that you should consider. Okay, now let's go to the last topic of this particular week's discussion, and that is, how do you create tables? Okay, so, and once again, just like everything else, I'm just going to type this stuff in a free form, so you can see exactly how it works. Okay, so uh, let's create a table. So to create a table, you need a table. Okay, and then remember, it's always a good habit to close the table, and that means anything associated with the table we will put in this table. And again, I hope you're beginning to appreciate that, even not the fancy stuff and the dynamic stuff and the web pages that keep changing and you put your mouse over it, all of that will come later. Okay, but get an appreciation for the fact that you can actually develop a pretty effective web page. You could say, hey, I want to create a web page where I can put my wedding, my friend's wedding pictures or my birthday pictures. And here's the big frame, and it's composed of all the pictures, and you click on it, and some of them might be linked, some of them you click on the picture becomes a bigger picture, and so all of these really interesting things can be done. Okay, so we're creating a table now. You want to create a row, right? You want to put in stuff in rows, and so a table row is tr. Now I'm going to create a simple table, and of course, using that information, you can add to it, and I'll give you a link which tells you, all the tables. For example, if you have one heading, one row, and then that row is divided into two more rows, or one column which is divided into two columns, and split columns and things like that. There's all the ways to do it. For this discussion, we'll just keep it very simple. But once you understand it, those other things, extending to those other things actually becomes pretty straightforward also. Okay, so and again, I'm going to close the row, and let's say I'm going to have a row of names, ages, and phone numbers, right? So in my row, now this is a row, right? And I'm going to have a table, and you can do other things with the table, and we'll worry about that later. And so, for example, I want to have a heading, which means the heading should be bold, right? Name, let's say I'm going to have two people. I'm going to call them John Doe, I'm going to call them Jane Doe. Okay, that person, John Doe and Jane Doe. And I'm going to have I have an age, and I'm going to have a phone number. But now what happens is, remember, at the top of the table, you always have the title of that column, so it would be name. So now, first I create a row, that'll be my topmost row, and I'm going to call table heading, TH. Okay, the first table heading is name, and then I'm going to close that table heading. The second table heading, okay, is TH again, and I'm going to call age, and I'm going to close that. And a third table heading is again TH, and that is phone number. And I'm just going to put XXX. So I'm not going to, I'm not going to divulge anybody's phone numbers here, and I'm going to close it. So now in my first row, okay, this is the row that I've created, and the top row. I create the top row. Now, aren't you curious to see exactly? I'm going to save it. Exactly how the table is heading, and so let's go to our web page. Okay, and remember, I'm going to include in the notes on Blackboard the notepad file that you can then write as an HTML file. Okay, so I'm going to refresh it, and you see I've got a little table here. Let me just push this up. Got a little table here, and that has name, age, and phone. Now you might say that doesn't look like a table. It just looks like a some sort of a like just type three things. That's because we haven't worried about borders and all of that. But I wanted to show you the elements, the heading, the elements of a table, the rows of a table. So that's our first row. And notice something, because I called it table heading, it automatically made everything bold. Okay. Now let's go to the next part. And that is now next row. So because I've got a next row, I've got to do a TR again. Okay. And again, you can put all of these in a line, but I like to separate it because I know exactly rows by row by row. And now, so let's call the first name. Now I don't have to put TH, it's not a heading, it's just an element in the table. So under name, I'm going to get John Doe. Okay. And then so this is not a heading, this is just a regular element in the table. And then I'm going to create age of, let's say, 45. And then I'm going to give a phone number. Okay, that's a new element in the table. So I'm going to say, XXX dash XXX dash XXXX. Okay, TV. And then I'm going to end my row. That's it. Now I'm going to start a new row. Okay, and remember something, that the table heading says that you should have 3 columns, right? There should be one for name, one for age, one for name, one for age, one for phone. And now that means my elements have to match, right? So name, age, and phone. And then I'm going to start my new column. And for the new column, I'm going to create, because this is not a heading anymore, Jane Doe. Okay. Age 25. And phone number, area code YYY, YYY, YYYY. Okay. And then remember, that is, I'm closing out that row, and the way you close out that row is this way. Okay. Now let's see the development of the table. Let's go to our web page. And you'll see, let me just make this a little better. And you'll see now it begins to look like some sort of a table. Okay. Now the question is, still doesn't look like a table. I could easily have just typed it. I could have just typed it as is, just with the appropriate spaces. Okay. So now one thing we can do is we can go back and go to our notepad file, and then here in table we can say, let's create a border, and I'm going to call border equals 1. Just a simple border, nothing fancy, nothing weird, just a simple border. Okay. And then we'll play around with borders a little bit, and I've saved it. So we go to our web page and we hit refresh, and look, now it's created a border. Just as simple as that. Okay. And then we can say, so now we have a table, and okay, Now it looks kind of weird, right? So what if we said the table has to be the length of what if we say the table has to kind of expand? Sometimes you might have a squished web page, sometimes you might have an big web page because you've maximized it, so you want the table to reflect that. So what happens if you say, well, the table's kind of squished, everything is squished. What if I kind of expanded my web page, decreased my web page? So you might say, well, wanted to span the width. I wanted to span the width of my web page. And the way you would do that is you would go to Notepad, for example. That's our text file. And then you would say, you see the way you put the border? You actually say width. And if you put width equals 100%, it's just going to, if you squish it, if you squish your web page, the table gets squished, or else it'll just take the it'll be expand to the width of the table. Okay, that's 100%. Now let's look at that. Let's look at exactly how this is supposed to work. So we'll go back, we'll save the file, and we'll go back to our internet web page, and I am going to refresh, and look, it went to the length of the page. Now let me do this. Let me just squish the page a little bit. See, I made the page narrow, and now it decreased accordingly. Okay, and all that it takes to do that is you change your width to 100%. Now, one of the things that you might also want to say is, well, I want, you know, some tables to be, some widths to be large, some widths to be small. And in this case, you would say, what if, for example, I had my width of the rows of the first column to be, let's say, uh, 30%. Okay, so let's do 30. Phone number takes a little bit of more space, so let's make uh, uh, 50, and then let's make age, or let's call it 25. So I do width equals 25. And then remember, I'm going to have to change that width for every one of these, for all my TDs, right, related to name. Okay, and then the age width, so let's make this actually 35%, and let's make the age width to be 15%, width to be 15%, and I'm going to have to copy this for all the others also. And there are probably a lot more dynamically easy ways to do this, but just because we're kind of in the learning process right now. And then that 35 plus 15 is 50, and let's make the width of the phone to be 50%. That'll give us 100%. And so I'm going to then put that in there, and I'm going to put that in there. Okay, and now let's see what it looks like. So now what happens is, though the 100% of the width will change, I can now say I want certain rows, certain columns to be certain width, and it makes perfect sense because it is a reflection of of the size, so everything doesn't have to be equal. The 100% will typically will take care of most of it, but let's just have a little bit of control over what we are doing here. Okay, so I'm now going go back to my web page, and I'm going to refresh, and you'll see that something got messed up. So one of these went out, so that's not a good idea, clearly. So once again, let's look at our notepad, and I made some mistakes. So let's see, our width is 35%, right, for the name, 15%. You've got to make sure that you have spaces here so it doesn't treat it weirdly. See, this was even misspelled. So WI width, okay, width. So it's all misspelled. Okay, so here I do this and I do this, and that's fine. And I think it just took care of it anyway. And so now let's go to our web page, and we'll hit refresh, and clearly you can see you can expand. And though you expand and contract, the rest of the things will change, but the ratios of in terms of, and you'll see that the phone number is a lot longer because we gave phone number 50% of the table length, and it'll always be 50% of the table length. Now it automatically justifies center. So let's now deal with, let's say for example, I want to put the names in the middle. I want to put the phone numbers in the middle, and I want to put the names left justified. I want to put the ages center justified or right justified because they are kind of integers, and I want the phone numbers to be center justified. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So let's now look at how to, now we have the width, we can specify the width in terms of percentages. Let's see how we can take elements and align it. I think the default is it'll align to the center, but you want to be able to have some control over that too. So you can say, let me now take it and align it to align some things to the left. And remember, we said that let's call the names align left. Let's align the ages to the right and align the phone numbers to the center. No particular reason other than just so that we can actually watch it happen. Okay, so you go to the left, and we're going to do the same thing. You can keep the names, the title headings center justified, and that's perfectly fine. So let's just go to our TD. So we've already specified the width. So you type in, you call it align, and you say left. Okay, and I'm just going to cut and paste it just to make life a little simpler. And I'm going to cut and paste here. Okay, and then I'm going to keep the age, the heading to be the same, and I'm going to, let me see if I can move this around a little bit, a little lower, so you can see what's going on. Align equals right. Oops, did I say right? Yeah, I meant right for this, and I'm going to cut and paste it here, and then we'll take the phone numbers. Oops. And we'll take the phone numbers and we'll align it in the center. Let me put a little bit of space there. And then let's look at this thing, and let's move it to the side so we can actually watch this, watch the phone numbers get aligned to the center. And so I'm going to, not the TH, yes, just the TD, align center. Okay, and I'm just going to align that to the center. And I'm going to save. I'm going to save what I have, and I'm going to save what I have, and I'm going to go to our web page, and I'm going to hit enter. Excuse me. And you'll see that automatically the name, the age, and the phone were center justified. That's kind of the default. But I use align left for the name, align right for the age. And again, you might say it looks kind of weird. That's fine. You can use your own choice. That is so that is how we look at. So once again, we looked at this, and you see that the name, age, and phone are right justified, are center justified. Sorry, that's default. And because we call align left on the names, John and Jane Doe, they are aligned left. Age is aligned right, and phone number is aligned to the center. So now again, you might say, well, the table is too big, it looks a little weird. I can squish everything so it appears perfectly fine. You can also now go in and say, well, all this is great. Let me go back to my basic notepad file, and I can change my I can change my table. Okay, I can make that width to be just 50%. So no matter what happens, it's always going to be 50%, but that the percentages of the width, etc., will be 50% of the page size, but the width and let me do this. In addition to that, let me align the whole table to the center of the page. So no matter what we do to the page, it aligns to the center. Okay, and now let's go to our web page and let's hit refresh. And you'll see that no matter what you do, it's aligning to the center of the page, and it'll be 50% of the size of the page. And of that 50%, 35% will be name, will be age, 15% will be age, and 50% will be the phone number. And again, there are other things you can do like cell spacing, cell padding, but I think I just wanted to create this. Now again, within this, you can take a picture, you can put a picture in the, in TD instead of a text, you can put a picture, you can put a link, you can put a picture which calls a link. Now you can start mixing and matching all the elements that you learned and put all of it together in one place. Okay, and you can make like a photo frame, for example, right? Now, how would you decide whether your photo frame will create a link? Is by just playing around with the sizes of your pictures so that it feels like a nice little photo frame. And that link will then potentially take you to a place where that photograph is stored. Okay, so this is all I had as HTML is concerned. Again, nothing great, nothing fancy, but you can create a web page, you can create an essay, and in that essay you can put links to pictures, links to different places. You can make it colorful, you can make it bold, you can italicize, anything you can essentially do in a Word document. With all, in addition, you can create all these links, and this is if you don't know how to create a web page, again, I've not taught you anything fancy. That's, but if you get comfortable with this, then you can go and expand and say, I'm going to, take what I've learned now and do something more fancy with it. Okay, and so this is our second class, and the next class will be on, the elements of Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And this is just to kind of give you a framework because this is computing applications. And the next courses, then all the remaining lectures, as I alluded to in the first series of lectures for the first week, is that is going to be different kinds of applications. And I will come back to you with introductions to different things like art and music. Some will be videos that are created by our faculty, some will be videos that are created, and my specialty is applications of computing to biotechnology, and that's what we will also learn. Okay, so that'll be 1 week. So I wish you good luck, second week of class, and we'll see you for the third week of the class too. Okay, thank you.